Good evening, and thank you, one and all, for coming here tonight for a very special occasion. It's been our honor here at the Kennedy School for the last few years to play host to the Gleitsman Foundation, as it recognizes people who are making an enormous difference in the quality of our life here at home and overseas. Each year, the Gleitsman Foundation has a nomination process and then a selection by a distinguished board to identify and then honor individuals who are committed to social change. 1 year, people who are acting internationally, and another year, people who are primarily acting here within the United States. Alan Gleitsman, who started this foundation, is an individual I've come to know, respect, and whose company I've greatly enjoyed today. Is a man who was very successful as an entrepreneur in California in the entertainment industry. He also has a social conscience and decided in life that one of the things he wanted to do with his assets was to advance the cause of social change. So the foundation, and that foundation has been the heart and soul of this program. A few years ago, Alan formed a relationship with the Kennedy School, and in more recent years with the Center for Public Leadership, which I have the honor to direct. And so every other year recently, Alan should be up here to the Kennedy School to make these awards, and that's why we're here tonight. And they have a splendid set of awardees tonight. It's not my role to introduce them, rather I'm going to leave that to Alan. But it is my honor as a director, as a faculty member here, to thank Alan for the work you've done, sir. To salute you for the social change you're bringing, and to tell you that we here at the Kennedy School are enormously grateful that you've chosen this venue as a place where we could come together and bring such distinguished Americans as we have here this morning. So, ladies and gentlemen, Alan Gleitsman.
Thank you very much, David, for your kind words and your guidance. And thank all of you for coming this evening. We have a very exciting program for you. You're going to meet some world-class activists, people whose work I know you will find interesting, and I hope that you will find inspiring. Before we go any further, though, I'd like to take a moment to thank Louisa Pellerin and Donna Calico, who made all the arrangements, not only for tonight, but for the balance of the time that the honorees will be on campus. As David mentioned, actually it was 10 years ago, a long time ago now, that we presented our first Gleitsman Foundation Activist Awards here at the Kennedy School. And since that time, we've developed a very strong relationship with the Center for Public Leadership, and we much appreciate their vision and their guidance and their assistance to us in so many ways. The Gleitsman Foundation was designed to recognize activist achievement and to encourage others to become activists. We hope that by recognizing the people whose work is so successful, others will realize that it can be done, and they will be inspired to take the torch and run, whether for a mile or a marathon, on behalf of some cause that's important to them and greater than themselves. In the last 17 years, we've had the honor of saluting more than 250 men and women whose efforts to bring about positive social change are extremely inspirational, and none more so than the people that you will meet here this evening. Now to introduce our honorees, it's my pleasure to introduce Sherry Roche. Sherry is Vice President of the Gleitsman Foundation very integral part of everything that we do. Jerry?
It's a real thrill to be back here at the Kennedy School. This is an exciting part of the year of the Gleitsman Foundation. And it's been a real pleasure to meet most of you this evening. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for your attendance. I have the privilege of introducing tonight's honorees, and let me begin. Growing up among the steel plants and factories in Chicago's southeast side and beginning his career in banking at the First National Bank of Lockport, Ron Grzywinski personally observed the disparities in economic opportunities between the African American and white communities. This experience inspired his commitment to discover ways that a financial institution can become a catalyst for positive social change. Ron recruited 3 like-minded colleagues, Milton Davis, James Fletcher, and Mary Houghton, and together they launched what became known as Shore Bank, the nation's first community development bank. Their mission was to provide African Americans, women, and other minorities with access to the financial resources and information that were typically unavailable to them, and that could fuel new opportunities for a healthy, vibrant, and self-sustaining community. Under the leadership of Ron and Mary, Shore Bank has infused more than $2 billion into Chicago's South Side neighborhoods and communities across the country, and helped to finance the purchase and renovation of more than 50,000 affordable rental housing units. By accomplishing Shore Bank's triple bottom line objectives, building stronger communities, creating a healthier environment, and achieving financial success, they have demonstrated that a financial services institution can change the world. They have been so successful in revitalizing our nation's inner cities and rural areas that Shore Bank was the inspiration behind the creation of a specialized category of regulated banks and credit unions called Community Development Financial Institutions, of which there are now more than 50 throughout the country. Scientist and author John Seeley Brown once remarked that the job of leadership today is not just to make money, it's to make meaning. And Ron Grzywinski and Mary Houghton have managed to make both. It is my pleasure to introduce and present the 2006 Citizen Activist Award to Ron Grzywinski and Mary Houghton. Please come up.
Mention briefly about this sculpture. This was created by Maya Lin. And when I asked her to do the sculpture for us, of course she asked me for the purpose of the work. And in telling her, she said, well, she thought that some people had the ability to see things more clearly, to see things just as if they were magnified. And that was the idea that she instilled in this, which, as you can see,
That's okay. Then we don't want to forget this.
Right, it doesn't matter. You know, these are going to our not-for-profit affiliate to provide opportunities for Shore Bank employees to learn about activities that happen in developing countries so that more people who are employed by Shore Bank can learn from that experience. So we're about to announce it now that we haven't shut. So thank you very, very much. So thank you very much. Thank you, Alan. I think I'd like to, I was told to be very short, and the schedule said 2.7 minutes, no, 3.7. Anyway, I would like to just recognize, we've always thought of Shore Bank as pretty much of a team effort. There are a couple people on the team who are here. One is Steve Belwell, our director. Where's Steve? I can't see him from here. There he is. Steve Belwell. Also, Louise Craig. Louise's unfortunately deceased husband, David, whose last full-time job was Dean for Finance and Administration at the Harvard Medical Center. David served on our board for probably 15, 18 years. And as Louise reminded me not too many minutes ago, since we always had board meetings on Saturdays, she gave up a lot of Saturdays to Shore Bank, including those that were very close to Christmas. So Louise, thank you very much. And Audrey, who's been tolerant of my probably being away from Chicago more than I am there. It's all a great big team effort, and there are a lot of other people in Shore Bank who are responsible for this. I asked Alan when I first talked to him, what should I say? And he said, well, you know, talk a little bit about the past, a little bit about the future. And as I thought about it, that seemed very boring. And it seemed as though you could sort of find out whatever you wanted to find out about Shore Bank on the internet or all kinds of places like that. And I thought I would use these 2 minutes, okay, to say maybe a couple of things. And that is to ask us all to maybe reflect a little bit, or to think a little bit, and what does it really mean to be a citizen activist? Well, first of all, to start with the negatives, okay, I think that it means not just tinkering at the edges, okay, and I think it also does not mean just being a good manager or a good administrator, although those things are very, very important. But what it does really mean is it means working to introduce a new order of things. It means taking risks, okay? It means taking risks, but being very, very calculated about it so that you can survive. It means to grow. And it also means to demonstrate that it is possible to do a new order of things. And if you do these things, if you take this path, okay, and perhaps this path less traveled, that you will be challenged, you'll be put down, and many bad things along the way can happen to you. Okay? But if you believe in yourself, and if you believe in your cause, and you believe that the cause is right and just, and if you stay focused, and if you will be deaf to all the people who tell you that it's not possible and it cannot be done, you can and you will change the world. And David asked me at the end of this afternoon, he said, Ron, are you happy? Or words to that effect. And it reminded me, I wasn't fast enough on the uptake, David, but it did remind me of a press conference. This is the most appropriate place to remind people of this. Press conference that John Kennedy had early in 1963, as I recall. And a reporter asked him at the end of the press conference, Mr. President, are you happy? And I think it was a setup question, frankly. But he responded with great eloquence. He said, the Greeks thought of happiness as the utilization of all of one's talents in the pursuit of that which is good. And I think that that really is a good definition of happiness. And I think being a social activist is really one way to be happy. So thank you very much.
I want to add my thanks for all of the 550 employees of Shore Bank who we are receiving this reward for. Ron is fond of quoting somebody who he can't remember that said it, who said the only revolution that will ever succeed in America is one which expresses itself in a conservative vocabulary. So think about it. After 30x years, these little bankers from Chicago are still able to qualify for a citizen activist award. So that's a great honor and maybe a proof that things are moving forward. I remember that When I first came to Shorbank, which was in the early 70s, and this is in honor of Gloria's just about to become speech, I was really quite interested in the feminist movement. And I was so pleased that I could be a banker and I could say in public, and I am a feminist. Now, this is an important freedom that we all don't have as often as we would. So thank you very much, Gleitsman Foundation.
Commitment, sincerity, integrity, strong leadership, organizational and communication skills, characteristics which just begin to describe our next honoree, Julie Stewart, founder of FAM, Families Against Mandatory Minimums. Julie became an activist after her brother Jeff was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for the first-time offense of growing marijuana in his garage. Although the judge in the case criticized the law as harsh, he acknowledged that he had no choice but to impose the statutory minimum. Outraged that the judge did not have the discretion to make the punishment fit the crime, Julie started FAM to promote fair sentencing laws. There are very few advocacy organizations that work at the grassroots level and are also players on a federal level. Julie has managed to accomplish both. She has become a respected expert on Capitol Hill on criminal justice issues. At the same time, she has built powerful grassroots networks that have the capacity to ensure that legislators are acutely aware that people in their own districts are watching them carefully. She has successfully persuaded policymakers that we should be smart on crime rather than simply tough on crime. Throughout the years, with the help of their 36,000 members, FAM's work has directly contributed to fairer sentences for over 435,000 drug defendants nationwide and paved the way for the current shift away from mandatory sentencing policies. Among FAM's successful legislative reforms are changes to federal LSD and marijuana sentencing policies, restoration of judicial discretion in certain federal drug cases, and the introduction of parole for nonviolent Michigan drug prisoners formerly serving life sentences. It is my pleasure to introduce and present the 2006 Citizen Activist Award to Julie Stewart. Julie.
First of all, let me apologize for my voice. Unfortunately, I've spoken a lot today and I'm losing it, but I kept enough intact to be able to say thank you very much to the Gleitsman Foundation and its board for choosing me for this very special honor. I've been doing this for almost 15 years, and it's a little bit like you said, after 30 years you're a citizen activist still. It's very nice to be acknowledged for the work that you do. I know that, you know, every day when I'm at work, I know that we are trying to make a difference in people's lives, but it's not always easy to see that difference being made. And so it's also especially important to be recognized by an organization that has absolutely nothing to do with sentencing reform, but is just interested in making the world a better place. I too wanted to recognize just a few of my guests who are here tonight because they sort of represent part of the 36,000 people that make up FAM. 3 of them are in the back, and they are a family who had a son in prison for an LSD offense, Regina and Patrick Lyons, and their daughter Delia. And it is people like the Lyons who come to FAM when something happens to their loved one and they want information. And unlike when my brother was arrested and there was very little information available, today if you Google Families Against Mandatory Minimums or mandatory minimums, you're going to get more information than you could ever digest. But I'm delighted that they're still active with us and support us. Also, two other friends who were here, Wakiba Labrie is the Open Society Institute's Program Director for Criminal Justice Issues, and she has been very helpful in getting, I think REA and I and George Show are so interested in sentencing reform anyway, but Wakiba has continued to push them a little further along the road of the importance of sentencing reform and criminal justice. So Wakiba is here partly to represent OSI and partly as my friend. And then Brian Diet is one of FAM's few people, although there's more than a few, but who have not personally been affected directly by mandatory sentencing, but recognize the importance of it. And we want to broaden that base, of course, because your movement is only as strong as you are in numbers in some ways. And the more people who not have the personal story that I have, but who get involved, the stronger we are. And so he lives in Boston. I felt it was appropriate that he come and share in this moment of glory. But mostly I really am here for the thousands of people who are in prison who I believe are there for too long, generally, and more importantly, that the judge didn't have a choice but to give them that sentence. And they can't be here personally, so I'm here on their behalf. And this check will go first to families against mandatory minimums. I'm keeping the statute though. But I just want to say very much thank you for coming tonight, and thank you so much for the award.
Wonderful people. Speaking of wonderful people, tonight is a particularly important occasion for us, as we have the honor of saluting a woman who has blazed the trail that many of us are trying to follow. It'd be interesting just to take a moment and reflect upon the opportunities that are available to women today as contrasted to the bleak and unwelcoming environment that faced our mothers and grandmothers and still face women in most of the world. Tonight we have the pleasure of presenting an activist award to Gloria Steinem. Without question, an extraordinary activist. Not only that, she has the good sense to have been a member of our board of judges for the Citizen Activist Award from the very beginning, and we much appreciate it. Gloria is a journalist. She is the founder and original publisher of Ms. Magazine, but most importantly, she is the most preeminent spokeswoman for the rights of women, both here in the United States and throughout the world. There's a Chinese proverb that says, women hold up half the sky. But before Gloria Steinem appeared on the scene, the women's half was very low, and it was a crushing impediment to a full and productive life. To the women of the Kennedy School, where your future is determined solely by your ability, it's a brand new world. And it's a world that's due to the efforts of Gloria Steinem and the women and men who saw the justice of the cause and were willing to work toward its goal. Is it a completely level playing field? No, we all know that it's not. But Gloria has not stopped her work either. When we were considering the name of the award to present to Gloria this evening, we thought of Lifetime Achievement Award. But we decided against that because that connotes completion, finality, and this is a woman still very much working for justice. So it's my pleasure to present the Gleitsman Foundation Citizen Activist Extraordinaire. First time, Gloria Steinem.
Alan suggested that I say a few words in praise of activism. So here are the 10 top reasons to be an activist with no apologies to David Letterman. 10. People have 5 senses because we're supposed to use 5 senses. Those who don't connect thought to action go a little crazy. Think of academics. Not the practitioners at the Kennedy School. So do people who don't connect action to thought. Think of George W. Bush. 9, activism is natural. It probably is born into us. How many times have you heard a little kid say spontaneously from nowhere, "It's not fair"? That's where activism starts, with the sense that things could be better, and that leads you to try to make them better. 8, if you don't act against unfairness when you see it, you'll get a terminal case of the what-ifs. What if I had said something to the parent who hit their kid in the supermarket? What if I had got into an RV and driven around Ohio to talk to voters? Since the saddest words known to men are, "It might have been," activism is the only cure for sadness. 7, do you want other people to be activists? If so, remember, we do what we see, not what we're told. As the great Fannie Lou Hamer used to say, more is caught than taught. 6, you'll be sending out a signal that attracts other activists. Who knows, you might find a new friend, a new job, a new lover, and who wants a passive friend, boss, or lover? 5, activism keeps your blood circulating, your brain synapses multiplying, and your neurons firing. Studies show that women who work at home, as feminists say, age physiologically up to 10 years more than women who work outside the home, not because their work is less important or because this should be the case, but because homemakers tend to become more isolated and less activist. So activism is the closest thing we have to a fountain of youth. 4, activists are the entrepreneurs of social change. Have you just seen from these great examples, they put together existing elements in a brand new way and create possibilities that could not possibly have existed before. Which leads me to the biggest secret of activism, it's fun. 3, remember, there is a plot to make most of us in this country passive. Television is the plug-in drug. No matter how good or how bad the content, the form makes us passive. The internet is only a little better. After all, sending around information is not the same as action. Don't you worry about us in this way? We're cocooning. We think we're acting when we send a message out, and we're not. Political power has won the centrist to progressive 70% of the country to be passive and only the conservative 30% to be active. In the immortal words of Tom DeLay, and I'm so grateful to him for his honesty. Just last week he said this, the last election, what we need is a low voter turnout. Therefore, activism is a form of rebellion and hope is a form of planning. Personally, I'm not only an activist, I'm a hopeaholic. 2, since we have no idea which of our actions will turn out to be important in the long run, the key to effective activism is to behave as if everything we do matters. That teaches us the secret of life, the one thing Marx didn't know and that totally messed him up. The greatest activist wisdom of all, and that is that the end just doesn't justify the means become the ends. The means we choose will decide the ends we get. So if we want to have kindness and poetry and dancing and humor and honesty and empathy and friendship at the end of the revolution, we need to have kindness and poetry and humor and honesty and empathy and friendship along the way. And how much fun is that? One, here is the number one reason. If you pursue activism long enough, you may find yourself in a room with courageous, creative people like Ron Grzywinski and Mary Houghton and Julie Stewart. People who have the revolutionary idea that democracy is good business and that the law might have some relationship to justice. You will be honored by Alan Gleitsman, who knows that criticizing may be important, but rewarding is the only way to make good things grow. And you will feel, as I do right now, that there is nowhere on earth that I would rather be than in this room at this moment. Thank you.
Alan spoke for all of us. He turned to me and said, just looked over and said, wow. Thank you, one and all. It's been an honor to have you here. We're going to open this up for about 10 minutes of conversation with Ron and Mary and Julie and Gloria. I must say, Gloria, whenever I see you, I keep thinking about I'm supposed to think that I'm a bicycle. Wasn't it that clip of yours about a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle? And that I've remembered for a long time. I thought, she may be right. She may be right. But I think what I heard tonight, if I may very briefly reflect on it, is being the presence of these four individuals and understanding how different our world is because of what they have done. The kind of social justice that has come from the Shore Bank and the inspiration it has given. It's a bank now that is in many different cities, works internationally, observes a triple bottom line in all of its activities. And has really made a difference particularly in housing, but in the financial condition in many low-income communities starting in Chicago. Recognizing that all of us are much more aware now of the inequities brought about by these mandatory minimum sentences. We would not have understood, there would not have been the changes, there would not have been the chipping away had it not been what Julie has done. And certainly I think that as all of us have reflected here recently about the changes that come in the lives of women, to a very significant degree because of the courage and the pioneering kind of spirit that Gloria has brought to this. So all of that we celebrate, and yet I think they will be the first to say how far we still have to go and how easy it is to slip back. When you think of how many people still live in terrible housing and the gathering storm that is coming with competition in the international community, that is going to probably bring, unless we reverse it, an erosion in the living standards where we are today as we face the kind of competitive threats of the future, unless we deal with it. When you recognize that how many people are still being imprisoned and under inflexible guidelines, with judges being robbed of their capacity to judge, and when you certainly recognize the pressures that are growing against the advances made by women, to think that what's going to be going on in the legislature in South Dakota and what's come there, and how easy it is, and how many, the story that the New York Times had just a couple of weeks ago, how many young women are now graduating and have been graduating from law school, and yet how few people are partners in major law firms and the kind of pressures that exist for young women who go into professions, then have a child, and find that they're under enormous conflicts. And it's just how it tears them apart in so many different ways. To recognize how easy it is to go backwards, that progress is not inevitable. It seems to me the importance of tonight is not only to salute, but to tell the younger generation here at the Kennedy School and beyond, you know, this is the work of this next coming generation too. It's not the work of the generation that's awarded here alone. Yes, they need to complete, as Alan said, with Gloria, that she has an unfinished agenda. But her unfinished agenda also becomes the agenda of the next generation. And the real purpose here tonight is to also to inspire and to have these role models. So we're delighted and honored that you're here among us. I do want to open this. I don't know how quite you envision doing it, Sherry, with the question. Did you want to have? She's the maestro, so I'm going to. Why don't you come up and then we'll open this up and you can direct your question to any one or ones that you wish. They're all inspiring, but why don't we, the floor is open. Who has a question or an issue you would like to pose, or a comment or a thought? This is an audience that always has diverse thoughts, I've discovered. Who would? Yes, please. Why don't you stand if you would? There's a microphone even.
I'm so right, I can speak. I'm a foreigner and I have no idea about the shoreline. But for me, when I hear that and activism, so I don't understand. I would like you to explain to me what is shoreline. What should we do
So the people who started ShoreBank had the idea that a bank could actually change the economic future of a low-income community by providing capital and credit to the residents of the neighborhood. And that was their business that was the bank's purpose, was to be a productive support to the residents of a community. So this is not a typical banker behavior, and that's why we're activists.
If I could add to that, I mean,
still make profit as a bank?
pardon?
Still make profit as a bank?
Oh yeah, no,
I mean,
we are a regulated, we have several banks, and we are a regulated bank holding company. The Federal Reserve Board regulates us in the same way as they regulate every other bank in the country. There's no difference. One of the things that is different is the ownership. We have 75 shareholders, all of whom have invested for the primary purpose of doing this work, doing this development. And so what makes the job really exciting is that we have to simultaneously serve two masters. We have to serve the owners who want us to do development and conservation work, and we have to satisfy the regulators who regulate to very high standards of safety and soundness, which includes profitability. But I think being an activist, it's all the things that Mary said, but it also means at the very beginning working with Mohammed Yunus in Bangladesh when he first became a bank, helping him to raise capital, talking to him at his invitation. He said, I'm an economist, I'm not a banker. And so we would talk about quite elementary things about banking. It meant going into the former Soviet Union in 1990 and working with the banks there as they tried to begin to provide private credit. Well, that's the main part of our work. Last year we did probably about $400 million. That doesn't include our net, doesn't include the net profit. In the United States, we did about $400 million of new money, loans and investments, and we do that year in and year out, and that goes into inner cities in Chicago, Cleveland, Detroit, and then we also work on the West Coast, and we work in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Let me just add one note, just to be a little modest. In 1977, as we all were reminded of again today, the Congress undertook scrutiny of the idea of what was happening in low-income neighborhoods through the commercial banking system, and what was happening was that many commercial banks were avoiding low-income neighborhoods. They were redlining these low-income neighborhoods. They would not go in and help you with a loan to rehabilitate your house or to indeed get a mortgage unless you had the U.S. government standing behind your mortgage, which was unlike what most other middle-class families face. And so Senator Proxmire, then during the Carter administration, sponsored legislation to see, should we change that? Should commercial banks be required to go in and into these neighborhoods as part of their portfolio? Ron was the only banker in the country who testified in favor of that legislation. It passed, and the difference has been some $2 trillion since 1977 has gone into lower income neighborhoods and the commercial banking system as a result of that legislative act. It was the marriage of a social entrepreneur with public policy, which is something we're talking a lot about here at the Kennedy School, about encouraging people to be social entrepreneurs, but to understand the importance of aligning your social entrepreneurship work with the policy of the public at large, and that can produce very powerful incentives. This Shore Bank is a legend for bringing transformative changes in the lives of lots and lots of people. And by the way, they have several nonprofit arms as well. So it's one of the miracles of people who learn how to do well and do good at the same time. And they don't do that well personally. They put 30 years of their lives into it, of building this institution that has served people well. Yes.
Hi. First, I'd like to thank you for sharing with us your very inspiring stories. I was wondering if I could get a bit of advice from you, particularly looking into the future. What do you guys each, because you each come from very different fields, and I'd like to hear each of you say what you see as the next citizen activist challenge.
No too much.
A little question like that. Turning out to vote. We are in the jam we are in right now, largely because, as I was saying, the 70% of the country that is centrist to progressive votes 0 to 50-some%, and the 30% of the country that is ultra right-wing. This isn't incidentally about Republicans and Democrats. I mean, because it's actually very often conservative right-wing Democrats who took over the Republican Party. I always feel I should apologize to my Republican friends. And Lee Grant summed it up for me because she said to me once, I've been married to one Marxist and one fascist, and neither one took the garbage out. It's really not about it's about issues, and it's about so we need to turn out the vote. We are almost the lowest voting turnout democracy in the whole world. We make it more difficult to vote than any country in the world. India has something like a 70% turnout rate, right? There's someone we're just talking from India here that because the polls are open for a week. We are in the jam we are in right now in large part because the results of the elections don't resemble the results of public opinion polls. So I think that is our challenge. And I would suggest that anytime we say to ourselves, who's going to run or what are they going to do, we've just given up our power. The question is, what are we going to do? How are we going to use our networks and our individual kinds of power to turn the vote out and educate the vote?
There's so many challenges, it's hard to choose just one, but I think a pet peeve of mine is that Americans have become too ready to accept a black and white world, that either you are good or you are bad, or this is the answer or that's the answer, and that, as I've said earlier today, I find life is very gray, and there's lots of, and it's very important that we try to tackle the complex issues, the difficult ones with care, instead of just finding quick answers. And that would apply to so many different issues.
So my nomination would be race issues in this country, poverty issues internationally. and the need for a generation of people to make it their career, their profession, their ambition, to specialize in running institutions that address those problems for, as long as it takes.
And I would just, I would line up a lot with Gloria. I mean, just think about who this school is named for. And think about the passion. And think about what America needs today in terms of a clearer vision, new leadership, values, okay, and where we got to go. So I think it's not only getting out of the boat, but I think it's really figuring out who's going to lead this country, and then getting out of the boat.
We have time for one or two more. If you want, if anybody else would like to raise a question, the floor is open. Yes. Or an answer. Ms. Meyer. Ms. Meyer.
I just want to say it is so wonderful to be in the same room with Gloria Steinem again. And I had the privilege to run the women's office in the Clinton White House from 95 to 97. And when I got that job, I was new to the women's community. I'd kind of come up through the women business owners route, and so I didn't have a lot of the contacts. And what I just wanted to say, sitting here, going back 10 years, is the difference that Gloria made in my success in the White House as a mentor. And she came in really and put her arms around me and came in and helped me to get validity with the women's groups. And so I will be eternally grateful to her for the support, because often as women, we're still struggling with reaching down and pulling up the younger women. And she was so helpful to me. And as I look back 10 years, there are certain poignant moments that stick out. And my time with Gloria in the White House is one of my most special times. And Gloria, my sister, is writing a book. My sister, who Dee Dee Myers was the Clinton's press secretary, is writing a book called Why Women Should Rule the World. And she sent out an email recently and said, I'm going to a group of people and said I'm going to ask various questions and every couple weeks. And one of them was, what is something that a man, that you've observed in your career that you've thought to yourself, a woman would never do this? And so I wrote Dee an email, which was one of the experiences I had with you, which I want to just quickly tell because you're so much in my thoughts and past from the White House days. But anyways, Gloria came to visit me, and we did a bunch of meetings with various people. We went to the White House mess for lunch, and then we went to visit the then Deputy Chief of Staff, Harold Ickes. And we were sitting in there, and you and Harold have been longtime friends. I don't know if you remember this. And they started talking about how old they were. And so Harold said, Gloria said, I'm older than you. And Harold said, no, you aren't. And she said, yes, I am, by like 5 years or something. And then she said her age. And then he said an age 5 years above that. And then she said, you are? And he said, no, I'm just kidding. And then she said, Harold, only a man would make themselves older than a woman to be a woman. It was one of my great memories of Gloria Steinem. So I just want to, in this long diatribe, I always hate when people stand up to ask a question and give a speech. I hate that, but I'm doing it. But I just adore this incredible woman. And I just want to ask you, what is it about your being? Have you always been like that, where you reached down and grabbed the younger women and pulled them up and gave them the confidence and the strength to carry on in the world of public policy?
I don't know, but I'm calling you when I'm depressed. Well, it never really quite occurs to me that that I'm not going to learn more from them or as much from them as they do from me. I mean, that's the whole idea, it's the whole, and actually, since we're in a Kennedy place, that was the way in which Bobby, at least, approached groups, because he was often, plunged into groups of people he didn't know. And so he would always look at them and say, okay, where can I learn something? Right? And that's, you know, it's an exchange. The older women have examples that will keep you from reinventing the wheel. The younger women have better shit detectors and higher aspirations and understand the internet better. So it's, you know, I think the main adversary of everything is hierarchy, and the idea that hierarchy is natural in any way. It is not natural. It is not natural. And, you know, each person is unique, each person is, I'm glad we're in a circular room. And if we think of it that way and try to dispense with the crazy idea that somebody with a paper degree knows more about politics than somebody who's actually been in the neighborhoods organizing the vote, you know, and they each know something different, or that somebody who's older or something, you know, if we get rid of those things and search out each other's experiences, then we're all better off. And I've always been better off, as you just evidenced once again, because of this attitude. Thank you.
Perhaps we should draw the evening here to a close as much as we're, but perhaps I can speak on behalf of the growing number of women here at the county school, and on behalf of the NET, starting with our Dean David Elwood, who's doing such a splendid job here, to thank you, Alan, for once again coming here to the school, for once again bringing to us the social activists. Especially thank you tonight for bringing such special, extraordinary social activists as the four here this evening. We're indebted to all of you for what you're doing for our society. You do serve as role models for our students, and we would love to have you back. Thank you one and all.